welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and this week we have the return of Matt. Welcome back to the co-host chair, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure as always.
And this week is a very varied type of news week. We've got stuff from gaming, we've got movie news, director stuff, but for anyone, if it is your very first episode, the way we format the show is we go through a block of news, which is the majority of the show. Then we cap it off with the Brocat block, which is the more personal side of the podcast, where you get to know Matt and myself a little bit better with what's been going on in our week, what we've been playing, reading, or doing. So let's jump right into this week's sector. Due to this month's ransomware attack, comic shops are suffering even more as Diamond, unfortunately, did get hacked. The distributor has stated that this will cause further delays to comic books released over the next couple of weeks. As of November 11th, Diamond did regain its access to its systems. I had talked last week about how customers were angrily tweeting in posts to previews that I was tagged in saying, why isn't my pull box working, which is a program that they use that's connected to Diamond to handle their subscription sheets. So it's been very frustrating for a lot of customers. It's been frustrating for comic shops. I've dealt with my share of book delays throughout my years working in the comic book retailing industry. And I've learned the way of stating it to customers and subscribers, but they are not a patient bunch. So I'm feeling a lot for comic shops this week with all of these different delays. Yeah, and to subscribers as well, but especially to shops because it's completely out of their control.
Subscribers and readers are creatures of habit. And when that habit is disrupted, that can cause some severe anxiety. You've got those Wednesday warriors who, they got to get their box on Wednesday or get their pull list on Wednesday. They look through all their comics, and at least for me, when I was a more regular reader, I arrange them in I go from the vegetables to the meat and potatoes to the dessert, as I would call it. So the stuff, the one that I wanted to read the most, I would put on the bottom, so I could have that nice payoff at the end. And, if I didn't get to the comic book store on Wednesday, or my books that I had pulled weren't in, I would be a cranky person when I got home.
I've heard, I'm still close friends with the people I used to work with there. And one guy apparently said excuses, like he didn't believe them type of thing. It's like, why would comic shops not want to sell you your comics? There's always that idea that the Wednesday Warrior doesn't believe the clerk. It must have just been a mistake you made. I don't know what the idea is, or maybe they just can't accept the fact.
You sold my pull list, didn't you?
Yeah, and it's one of those, and I've heard of comic shops doing that, by the way. The ones that they're like, if you're not in by week 3 of that book's release and someone needs a book, they just pull it out of boxes. That's not something we did, but I've heard of comic shops doing that. So I kind of get that fear because they probably may have had that at a different store. One of our old competitors actually used to do that. But again, I just, if you have a subscription at your local comic shop, take it from someone who worked at a comic shop for over 9 years, and you did as well, and you managed and did all that too. It's not, the comic shop wants to sell you your stuff. It's as frustrating, if not more frustrating, for the clerk and the manager and the comic people that they're not getting the product that they ordered to sell to you, because that adds another layer of frustration. Delays mess up our weeks completely. It's not a fun thing.
Oh, yeah, especially in this supply chain disrupted post-COVID world where, we're constantly out of stuff at where I work, where, certain product lines, we'll get in, we were getting Halloween in late, and we had people getting angry with us that we didn't have Christmas in yet. Now Christmas is here. People are like, this is all you have? Well, we don't know what we're getting when we're getting it, because we're just getting it when we get it. And people are so hungry for it that, you constantly read about shortages here and there. They're like, all of our Christmas seasonal stuff looked full last, Thursday, Friday. By Sunday, it looked like we were going out of business. it's just people are like saying, well, you clearly don't want a business. Like, no. We don't want an empty shelf. An empty shelf makes us look like we're running out of business. Like, we want product. I get the people's frustration with like, oh, you meant it that way, or you're just trying to drive up prices. Like, no, we're not. we really don't want you yelling at us for something that is completely not in our wheelhouse in this store.
It's still amazing to me, and I don't know if I'm just a little. It's because we work in the industry that we understand a little bit more that everyone is hurting for supply of all kinds. But this late into 2021, to still see people frustrated at delays, I've come to expect it now. Like, oh yeah, no, everyone's missing shit. I get it. Or you ran out of that. All right, I don't expect it anytime soon. That's probably what it is, but people are still in that mindset of, let's get back to the way things were. I totally get the impatience. I understand it. We want to get back to that normalcy, which we're not at yet, and we're not close to being at yet. Just more fallout from the shutdown and the pandemic. But it's kind of like, all right, at some point you have to accept the fact of this stuff is going to be missing. This stuff's going to be delayed. Restaurants are closing early or opening late because they don't have the staff to do these things. This is becoming a new normal of sorts until things, get back to post.
It'll be another year and a half before the supply chain is back to where it was at pre-COVID. Just because more people are vaccinated and more things are returning to normal doesn't mean like it's immediately back to normal. It'll be immediately back to normal. And speaking of missing shit, pun intended, our suppliers give you like how ridiculous the supply chain is. That our supplier, where we get like our bags, our cleaning supplies, our toilet paper, and all that for our store, they're back ordered on toilet paper to February.
Oh man,
my boss just had to order toilet paper from Amazon for our store.
Holy shit.
Yeah, literally.
And that's one thing that I was like, okay, we need to get another thing of toilet paper. And she's like, we have a full pack. I'm like, that's our backup pack. Like, we now have a backup pack. Like, this is a thing now, just in case. Because that's one thing I fucking definitely don't. And I'm not panic buying, like, let's get 18. But it's like, I don't want to fucking run out of toilet paper. That's something. Right. So it's getting a little insane still. But have some patience. Take a count to 5 and just trust, at least in your comic clerk. They want your business. They want those things. And it's absolutely out of their control.
As Steve Jeppy would say, don't worry about it.
Yeah, if he caused too much of a ruckus, he might, he might send someone your way, and you don't want to see that. You don't
Listen, I heard you were complaining about your pull box. How about you worry about your knees more?
What do you mean? He's in the fight with the Russians right now. They're sending hackers over to him. Fucking Russian mafia's going. Yeah, I feel for Steve too. He's feeling a little bit of the pressure, but I'm rooting for him. Another thing that did end up we never saw the light of day on this, and it's in the gaming world. There was a canceled Batman Arkham Knight sequel, and the plans leaked online. Judging by the concept art, it is the rumored canceled Damian Wayne Batman game that was in the works. It was from WB Montreal, and they had previously done Arkham Origins, and now they're working on Gotham Knights. So I saw some of this concept art, and they're obviously using some of the same assets from the Arkham Universe game, which is always a good thing. They're not Rocksteady. I like Rocksteady a lot more. Their games are solid. Arkham Origins was a good holder until we got Arkham Knight, but it wasn't my favorite Arkham game. But it is interesting to see that they were willing to take the story further into the world of Arkham Knight. And I'm not worried about spoilers, but did you beat Arkham Knight, Matt, or do you know what happens at the end?
I know that Batman there's the appearance of Batman dying.
Correct. Yeah. So there's no more Batman. Wayne Manor gets blown up, kind of like Batman Begins a little bit. And then we see someone in an alley towards the end. And I think this is if you 100% it or you get all the Riddler trophies. And they seem to be using the fear toxin to put fear into the heart of criminals. So it seems like there's some other new Batman. And I don't know if this is the one that they were saying was going to be Damian Wayne's Batman, but they definitely had a story to continue, which we have yet to see. Rocksteady has moved on to do a Suicide Squad game. I don't know if it takes place in the same universe, but they're at least still doing a DC game, and I'm sure it'll be great. But if this had been Damian Wayne's, like, okay, let's jump in the future. We see concept art of Bruce Wayne. You see him in the cowl, and he's got this long-ass beard. So we know Bruce is still alive. I had no doubt about that. But now we have this other Damian Wayne Batman who is very different from the comic book Damian Wayne 666 Batman Jump into the Future. This is almost like a hybrid Batman Beyond Damian type of suit that we saw. And I think some of that tech would have come along with it. Were you at all intrigued by an Arkham game starring Damian?
My feelings on Damian are well known. I'm not his biggest fan, but I am intrigued about like seeing this jump into, like, they seem to be with like Future State and other things. Like, I like these ideas that of progressing him to a point where, like, okay, he's past his he's still a dick, but he's past his scrappy do phase, if you will, where like he's got some maturity. He's still humorless, but like I like that they some of these ideas that they've been playing with him, like being like a possible like new Ra's al Ghul type figure, and then okay, well he's taking up the mantle, and he's not afraid to use like the weapons of Batman's enemies, for his fight. Like I'm kind of intrigued about the idea of like him using like a version of Scarecrow's fear toxin to scare criminals too. So it's an interesting twist on after years of Batman, people basically knowing that like he may beat you to a pulp, but he's not going to kill you. Well, you got to have a Batman that is not afraid to use the Scarecrow's weapons, or what else is he employing from Batman's rogues gallery. So like I'd be interested to see a game like that. I don't necessarily think I'd want to see like a long form story with it, but like seeing an older Damian who's past being just like a petulant piece of shit it does intrigue me.
The Grant Morrison Damian, it's really interesting because I don't know if it's true as far as like his intention, but he always said that he intended to make Damian Wayne an unlikable character, which a lot of people did dislike or did not like him when he debuted. And there weren't a lot of qualities to him that were positive to a Robin. And then eventually, when he got off the Batman book, Damian was still alive. Pat Gleason and Peter J. Tomasi, they saw that character. They took on the New 52 Batman and Robin book, and they said, all right, now let's make Damian grow. He needs to get a little bit humble. He needs to work with Batman. He had only been with the League of Assassins with Ra's al Ghul and Talia. So we understand his upbringing, but now he gets to learn the ways of Bruce, and they grow together as father and son. Bruce isn't he has no experience really being a biological father. He works with Robins, and in some way they view him as that relationship, but this is blood, and you see that difference when you're reading the comic. Damian doesn't have a father figure. Ra's al Ghul, he knows he's his grandfather, but it's not the same, and that's why Talia wanted him to go live with Bruce. He grows as a son. He grows to be a better person, and that's when Grant Morrison was like, all right, well, I always intended to kill him, so now I'm going to kill him. And I remember being pissed at that point. And Peter J. Tomasi, they weren't happy about it because they were doing this great thing with the character and with this book. And I was happy when they were like, okay, well, he's back now, so fuck you. And we're going to continue this.
I did like Tomasi and Gleason's like silent issue with like the death of Damian, just like a completely wordless issue. Like, that was pretty powerful.
That's one of my favorite issues of all time. Just Bruce, and it has a lot of callbacks to previous issues in the run. Same panels, and then him now alone without his son. Mm-hmm. Incredible, and it's because of Peter J. Tomasi and his run with Gleason that is my favorite Robin. I think if you did not have that duo, I don't know how much growth Damian could have made. I don't know if we would have seen him in animated movies or in an entire fucking video game. Do you buy at all that Grant Morrison always intended him to be a piece of shit and did not always intended to kill him, or do you think part of him was like, they've changed the character to what I wanted, so now I'm going to kill him?
Grant Morrison, as crazy as he is, he always has like a plan, like an end point for his stories in mind. So like
Okay.
I remember, when he did JLA with Howard Porter, I had went to his table at a con, and we just chatted a bit about it, and he was like, yeah, he had an end point in mind for, like, he always has, like, he goes into a book, and he's like, I've got like a 3-year plan or something like that, and like sometimes he gets there, sometimes he doesn't. He does veer off a little, here and there, but like he's one of those guys who he has an end point in mind. And so I believe him when he says, like, he meant to make Damien unlikable and will eventually plan to kill him. The other thing, that I don't like about him is that it came at the expense of Tim Drake, because Tim Drake, like, that character hasn't been the same as much the work as other people have like put into trying to up his profile since. Like, it's kind of like when the New 52 happened and Wally West kind of disappeared, and they keep trying to bring him back. It took years to bring Wally West back, and the one that, not the new Wally West, the one that had taken over the Flash mantle from Barry.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing with like Tim Drake. It's like it's the character hasn't been the same, or hasn't had the same audience or following since they introduced Damien.
I'm glad things have worked out, at least as a fan of the character thus far. Maybe one day we will get that Damian Wayne game, or at least something starring in him. Maybe in that Gotham Knights game, there'll be some DLC. I'm sure some of those assets, they don't go to waste. They like to reuse them in some form. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Gotham Knights. But something that was long rumored, we covered it here during the leak by Hungrybox. And today, Warner Brothers, whether or not it was when they intended to release this video, who knows, but they did give us an official look at MultiVersus.
Victory! I haven't even broken a sweat.
We got the trailer debut. It is not a mobile game. We were speculating a little bit, like Scott previously said. He thinks if it's true, it's a mobile game. We were kind of halfway there. It's a free-to-play game. It is going to be on PlayStation 4, 5, and then Xbox Series X and the previous console version of it. And then it's also going to be on PC. And this is basically their version of Warner Brothers Smash Brothers. It's exactly what they were rumored to be in the leak. Those screenshots ended up being real, as shoddy and weird Photoshop, whatever low quality as it did look. All the characters are there. Tom and Jerry, Harley Quinn, Shaggy, Batman, Game of Thrones. We're seeing Arya Stark in there. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, this is kind of unreal that we're getting a Warner Brothers massive crossover like this.
Yeah, the screen caps that I'd seen before didn't excite me too much. But after watching this video, I'm like, you know what? I'm down. Like, I really want this. Like, but yeah, exactly what you were saying. Like, it's Super Smash Brothers, but with the Warner Brothers library characters. I was like, when I read through, saw like Arya Stark was going to be in there. I was like, oh wow, they're really going everywhere with this. And yeah, I'm glad to see a lot of the voice talent, on there. Shaggy is like, now you're going to have like that whole meme of, Shaggy having unlimited power or maximum power. Like that's now going to be a thing in a game. And yeah, Kevin Conroy's back doing it again.
Yes.
That video that if it works as well as that video made it seem, then sign me up. Like, that game looked like a ton of fun.
One of the biggest aspects they kept emphasizing is that it's better to be played 2-on-2. That's kind of how they designed it, but that they would still have at least a level of enjoyability for people that only want to play by themselves or 1-on-1. So I had a little concern there with, if I do want to just play by myself, can I still be really good at the game? Can I get good at the game? Or are characters designed to work better if they're paired with another? So that's one thing I was a little bit worried about. I used to play Super Smash Brothers Melee a lot, to the point where I was playing level 9s and just trying to get really good at it. I never got to the point of the competitive scene. These people broke the game. Like, they know their shit. But I used to think I was good because I used to, beat all my buddies and the neighbors and all of that. And I've since played all the Smash Brothers. I've played every single one. So to me, this is awesome. I love that it's free to play because someone like me who doesn't have a lot of time to game these days, I can at least download it, try it, play it. The other thing that I was concerned about is that it did look like it played a little bit slow. So I'm used to a faster paced Smash Brothers or platform fighter, and this one did look like it. I don't know if it was lagging or if it's intentionally just a little bit of a slower game, but I did have some hope in the fact that they did mention e-gaming, competitive scene, so they at least made the game with the intention of, if you want to play this competitively, there's some mechanics in there that'll get you there, but otherwise, it's going to be fun as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
On the Star Wars side, this is something that you'll probably have more experience or more thoughts on than I have. Lucasfilm and Disney have controversially renewed their contract with Kathleen Kennedy through 2024. This came out not long after reports of Rogue Squadron being removed from the shooting schedule due to scheduling conflicts with director Patty Jenkins. And Rian Johnson's spin-off Star Wars movies are also not moving forward over creative differences as well. There's a lot of rumors as to why that's happening, but I know a lot of Star Wars fans are, in general, they've been pretty unhappy with the new trilogy. There's generations that are growing up with this trilogy and they're perfectly happy with it, and that's great. I'm more of a casual fan, so to me, they're all okay movies. They're all Star Wars. What do you think about this move of keeping Kathleen Kennedy on?
I think it's a mistake. All the credit in the world to Kathleen Kennedy. She's been a consistent force at Lucasfilm, not just with Star Wars, but like with the company. She's been there forever. She earned her spot. But I think it's time for her to kind of like move on. I feel like the reins of Lucasfilm and Star Wars in general should be given to split between Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. Dave Filoni has like kept the animation side, like has kept upping the game each new series that comes along. With the exception of Star Wars Resistance, I felt like that was definitely aimed more at kids, but Rebels, Bad Batch, the new final season of Clone Wars, Dave Filoni is like guiding the animation side to like heights that are like each series, like they improve their animation, their storytelling. Some of it, like the first season of Bad Batch took a little buy-in, a little time to get into, but like that, the end of that first season, really, I wanted the second season immediately. Jon Favreau launching The Mandalorian, and now like how many series, live action series that's spinning out of there. Dave Filoni helped out there as well. I think those two really know the DNA of Star Wars, and they're giving us the stuff that feels like the original like true extensions of the original trilogy. Dave and the story group from the animation side, really, it took them years and multiple seasons, but they managed to pull some gold out of the prequel trilogy. And I'm sure they'll eventually do something with the sequel trilogy that is at best uneven. Like there's some stuff that I like, but the final chapter, the J.J. Abrams came back for, like, I've stopped watching that one just because I want to remember enjoying it, and I know the more I watch it, the more problems I'm going to have with it. Not to the level of the prequels, but I think Kathleen Kennedy, fine to keep her on board in like an advisory capacity, but I think that the real architects of the success of Star Wars going forward rests with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and Deborah Chow, and basically everyone who's working on the stuff that's new on Disney Plus now.
And that's something that was also shared on Discord. I think it was by Jared, who's a pretty big Star Wars fan. And I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently they were aiming at making Dave the head of Star Wars when Lucasfilm was still not owned by Disney. And then when Disney bought all of that up, that's when those plans did not go through. And unfortunately, that position that Dave was aiming at instead went to Kathleen Kennedy. Is there any truth to that there?
It sounds about right.
Okay.
I don't know the details of it, but I know that they were angling towards that was before like all the Disney Plus happened. Like any time like series were happening outside of animation. But as long as they keep him around, that's a good thing. I think Kathleen Kennedy trusts him. But I'm not. What I'm more curious about is like where the creative differences are coming from with like going with Patty Jenkins or Ryan Johnson, like trying to like with these new other things that have now been shelved. I know Ryan Johnson, his last, his chapter that he did for the prequel trilogy, it was very divisive.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he took risks. I thought the middle chapter of that sequel trilogy was, the best of the three. The first one was more nostalgic for, had a lot of the feelings from the original trilogy, but it was basically telling the same cycle of story that you saw in the first go around. Whereas like his took risks with it, and I would have loved to see what he did with a Star Wars trilogy that didn't have to have like feature the Skywalker storyline. I think he would have had some crazy ideas.
That's kind of a hot take right there.
And then Patty Jenkins. Oh, sorry, go ahead with the hot take.
Well, I was going to say that was a hot take right there because it seems like everyone kind of agrees that The Last Jedi was their least favorite, but it's interesting that you gave him credit to like, hey man, he tried something new, tried something different, because people complained about the first one being the same as episode 4. So here you go. Here's something radically different. Well, no, he did it wrong though. And that's what I kept hearing.
And then you have J.J. Abrams that comes along and does
right.
the, like supposedly like course corrects all of his stuff, but like everyone now then criticized him for course correcting that. Like you should have just kept like gone along with it. Like go where the threads that Johnson gave you actually led. I think, Trevorrow had some good ideas, but he had creative differences. So like it seems like the creative differences seem to be happening more with the feature side of things than the episodic side of things for like Disney Plus, because like there you could have a little bit more breathing room. You can take a little bit more risk because you're dealing with like half hour, 45-minute chunks, whereas like okay, you're making for the features like they're trying to make something that's going to make them, 100, like make them like $1 billion here, $1 billion there. And you saw like Solo didn't do so well in the theaters. And, I would get into arguments with some friends that were big Star Wars fans of like, if this in between prequel stuff or these single stories, like the first one that bombs, you're going to see the end of these, these side stories, these things that don't lead into a series. They should be better as a series. And this was before Disney Plus, and like then Solo came along and way underperformed.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had like Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who were running that movie. They had creative differences, and they left, and Ron Howard had to come in and try to salvage something out of that. And what he salvaged was fun. It wasn't unwatchable, but it would have been better as a series because, well, know where Han Solo's story ended at that point. There really wasn't any stakes for a movie. That should have been a series. The features seem to be where they be having more creative issue or differences, and I would have liked to see what Patty Jenkins could do with a Star Wars movie. Well, I'd love to see what Ryan Johnson would do. Maybe he'll do like a Zack Snyder, and like he'll end up doing a trilogy for Netflix that would have been his ideas.
Here's my Star Wars.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Patty Jenkins because this is something that fascinated the hell out of me. Now, we know she can make good films. She's done Monster, which was, I think, a breakout film for her. And then the first Wonder Woman movie, which I know there's a lot of thoughts on that because Zach was more involved in the production of that. She used a lot of Zach's crew as far as the special effects and the choreography, which she ended up firing for 1984. She didn't use them. So, and we know that, all right, so a more Zach influenced movie, great. But then when she does her own thing under this new regime and she's like, I don't want her using her sword. I don't want her using her shield, just her lasso and changes it completely for 1984. it kind of had me very worried. And then as soon as Disney does this, which they did a whole feature video interview with Patty, where she talks about how great Star Wars is and how she's really excited to go into Rogue Squadron. And then a month or two later, she's no longer involved. And it's like, what's happening? Did they see how 1984 performed, or is she difficult to work with as far as like, these are the plans that we want you to follow? Are they being more formulaic because of how things like Solo performed? There's a lot of questions there, because they really were backing Patty hard, and something happened over the last month that vastly changed it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, would I like to see what she would have done? Absolutely. But, you have it, you made a point there that, she basically was allowed to do whatever she wanted with Wonder Woman 84, and it wasn't as strong a film as the first one, which she famously lamented that the third act wasn't her act. Well, the third act, other than, the common complaint on big CGI budgeted movies, there you have a big CGI battle at the end. Well, yeah, but you still had some emotional things in there, and would I love to see what Zack said, where that little teaser that he had with the having taken place in the Crimean War.
Oh yeah,
like I would have loved to have seen that too, but it's hard to discern now what ideas in Wonder Woman were originally from Zack's story ideas and which ones were from hers. If you're going that 84 is more hers, it wasn't as strong a movie. Doesn't mean she wouldn't have had good Star Wars ideas. I think that, maybe she wanted something untethered, and Warner Brothers was going to say, like, okay, they already promised her that she could do whatever she wants for the third Wonder Woman movie. Yeah. And, she was like, maybe this isn't, worth it, trying to, check these certain Star Wars boxes.
That was one of the things that another Bobby on the Discord said, that he thinks that it might be maybe Wonder Woman 3 would have either gotten delayed or ended up having been directed by someone else, and that Warner Brothers ended up putting another zero on that check and brought her back over to do Wonder Woman 3, and that's why Rogue Squadron didn't happen, and that's what they're calling scheduling conflicts. We can only speculate, unfortunately, at this point. I like that you brought up the Crimean Wonder Woman picture, because now, after yesterday's, at the time we're recording, Zach put up this cryptic message on the day that we all pushed for Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut, years ago, on the anniversary of Justice League releasing in theaters. He put up a picture of, I think they're called clappers, and we're still figuring out what the numbers mean, and in the back was the Crimean Wonder Woman. So people were like, oh my God, there's a lot of speculation. Like, what does this mean? Because we know he's very cryptic when he puts stuff like that out. Now they're even asking, like, why don't you do that 1884 Wonder Woman movie, the Crimean War Wonder Woman? And in the past, he said he would never do that because, one, it's already in BVS, that picture, the one that, and that he doesn't want to discredit the amazing things that they did with that first Wonder Woman film. But it's still like, man, you want to see that movie so bad, that Wonder Woman that takes off heads and collects them, this warrior, that'd be amazing.
If they're buying in, if they're really going to push into this like multiverse thing for DC, which has been DC's bread and butter way longer than it's ever was Marvel's. What's to say that he isn't shooting something that doesn't have like a multiverse aspect, that where you see a minute or brief cameo scene that's the Crimean War Wonder Woman.
Is that what was said?
No, I'm just saying, like, what if that's what if that's what he's shooting, or he was? Oh, I see. Making a reference to, like, what if it's it's the multiverse now, and he's a proponent of the multiverse. You've got this the Flash movie that's going to be playing with the multiverse. Let's say that there isn't, like, they didn't ask Zach, like, hey, you want to shoot this one little bit that's going to be like a tag inside of this, like a little snippet showing like this section of the multiverse in the Flash movie.
Yeah, that'd be incredible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Warner Brothers, I feel like they're like, we are all about the multiverse, except the Snyderverse. That's not a part of the multiverse. We'll see when things change next year as Discovery comes on board and takes charge. But until then, Warner Media They're still with their announcements. They did announce this week that Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, and filmmaker Chris Columbus will be doing an HBO Max 20th anniversary reunion special. This will be dropping as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Day. I think that's really cool, really creative. And the special will also debut on TBS and Cartoon Network in spring of 2022. Those are Warner Brothers owned networks, so all of that makes sense. I'm excited for this. I think this almost pretty much tells us, especially coming off of the comments that Chris Columbus just made last week of, I want to do The Cursed Child as a film starring these same actors, and that would get me to come back to Harry Potter. I almost feel like that announcement is coming, especially with how Fantastic Beasts has been performing lately.
Yeah, I'm about it. Like, I love, the Harry Potter series was so successful that Daniel Radcliffe has said more than once that, like, he can do whatever he wants as far as creative projects go. Like, so, like, he wants, like, if he wants to come back to Harry Potter, he will. He's not no one's forcing him, or there's no amount of zeros you can put on the check that would change his mind. I feel like he's done enough creative stuff since Harry Potter where if he would only come back if he felt the story was there, or he wanted to do it. Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, they've all had, like, they've kind of established themselves as more than just Ron, Harry and Hermione since then. And I'll watch it. Like, I'm an HBO Max subscriber, so I'll watch it. They always seem to have something interesting to say, and if they announce a Cursed Child adaptation, then they're at the age for it now.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he was saying too. I'm going to watch it too. I'm excited. People are attached to these versions of the characters. I know there's been a long rumored, non-confirmed HBO Max reboot of those books as a series that they're saying that it's not going to happen. And now I'm kind of leaning more. At first I was like, they're going to fucking do it. There's a lot of life in Harry Potter. There's going to eventually be a reboot. They have to. But with these actors still alive and with the generations of fans that are still attached to those actors and those films, it makes sense to, let's do a future film. You already have the material, The Cursed Child, film it, break it up into 3 more movies. Then get J.K. Rowling or someone else, because I know she's a controversial figure right now. Yeah. Someone else to write another sequel to The Cursed Child, and then you've got another 9 movies on your fucking hands. And people like us that are going to be there to watch them.
I want to see a lot more of that with those characters as adults now than see any more of these Fantastic Beasts movies.
Me too, man. You can go for, again, this is not an exaggeration. You can go 20 movies with these characters. Yeah. Another era of movies when they're older. You can continue all of this. And I think that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of legs still on Harry Potter. It's not a franchise that's going away anytime soon. We've got the latest filmmaker. And this is something that if people would stop reacting to this, I would stop talking about it. Maybe. I don't know. But Ridley Scott, the great Ridley Scott, one of the greatest living filmmakers today, is the latest in the growing list of Hollywood people to blast superhero films. In an interview with Deadline, he said, quote, "Their scripts are not any fucking good. I think I've done 3 great scripted superhero movies. One would be Alien with Sigourney Weaver, one would be fucking Gladiator, and one would be Harrison Ford's Blade Runner. They're superhero films." End quote, or superhero movies, end quote. In that same interview, he did go on to praise Joaquin Phoenix's Joker film. He said, quote, "It's almost Shakespearean, and I think, Joaquin can do anything. So when he then does something like Joker, there are moments in the Joker that I've never seen before." End quote. I think this is probably the most intense quote that we've gotten from these filmmakers. Like, we've got Denis Villeneuve, Martin Scorsese. I forgot who else was saying stuff. And they've all been pretty, even just Martin Scorsese saying, I don't consider them cinema. And then him having to clarify, like, look, this is what I mean. This is like straight up. He did not hold anything back. And there were still, even after Endgame happened, they're up to, I don't know how many fucking movies, over 30. They've got TV series coming out. I don't know, Multiverse Daniel, that is an MCU fan, I like to think that I'd be like, look, I've got my shit. I don't care what they say. Like, I would not feel insecure about what filmmakers would think. But it still happens. You go through the Twitter thread, and I had a field day going through it. They were fucking pissed yet again that someone else had something negative to say about, and it wasn't even specifically MCU, just superhero films.
Yeah, it's like someone shitting their cornflakes.
Right.
I'm not surprised that Ridley Scott would say something like that. Which, if his brother Tony hadn't committed suicide or was still alive now, or like you move the Scott brothers, 20 years into the future, like they're in their prime, like right now, Tony Scott would totally be doing the superhero movie. Like, he was more of the action guy. Ridley would do stuff that was more heady stuff. I got to dispute his description of superhero movies. Like, he has heroic characters in his movies, but Alien's a horror film. Blade Runner is a heavy sci-fi film, which really wasn't recognized for what it was until like 20 years after that movie came out. So like, he does have heroic characters. I wouldn't say that they're superhero movies that he did, but I can see why he'd say that. But I'm not mad at him. Like, it's like, if someone makes a joke at you and at your expense, if you take it personally, then maybe it's because like you feel like there's some truth to it, or
right.
Like it did hit home, or and if it rolls right off your shoulder, then like you have the confidence like that it does. You're not taking it personally. Like, it's so like old sticks and stones may break my bones. Ridley Scott sounds to me like like superhero movies are hurting him personally, and I don't know where he would get that from. Like, he's still doing quite well. Like, his last couple of like entries into the Alien series didn't really hit, but he was still shooting. Still had some great visuals in him, and he was still trying to hit it over the fence. He's an iconic filmmaker, and he's certainly entitled to his opinion. And when you look at the breadth of superhero movie makers over like especially since I'll go as far as since Batman '89 up to now, there aren't too many filmmakers across all the movies that I would say are auteurs or visionaries, right. Like have their own distinctive stamp. Like, Tim Burton's one, Zack Snyder's two. You've got it's basically anyone who's not working for Marvel now. As much as I love the Marvel ones, all these movies are still playing off of the template that Jon Favreau sent in Iron Man. So like, they all kind of exist in that formula that he established in that first movie. After that's maybe the
I might even give it to, and I don't like the guy, but Pedo Gunn, like, he did change the movies with Guardians 1.
Yeah, Guardians, like, they're only now like starting to like, like take some risks. And with Guardians, like, they did it with like an assortment of characters that never were the original Guardians of the Galaxy. The original Guardians of the Galaxy was like Marvel's Legion of Superheroes. It took place 1,000 years in the future, and they just gave those guys cameos in the second one. But like, there aren't a lot of like real like visionary directors in Marvel. They all want them to kind of like film like fit into like their house style. And just like with the comics, like every once in a while, like someone will come along that does kind of change the style or change the direction that now changes the house style to, towards that particular person. So like James Gunn is one of them. The Russo brothers, their individual Marvel movies definitely have a different feel than, than a bunch of the others. So like, I'm a fan of the Marvel movies, but their biggest fault is that they all kind of fit in the same house styles. Whereas like, across just comic movies in general, there isn't a lot of like individual style allowed to shine. Joker was one of them that like, I still have not watched the whole thing. Like, I still don't want to like see a Joker movie that has nothing to do with Batman, but I can, from what I have seen of it, it's like, okay, Todd Phillips had a vision. Like, I would never expect, Todd Phillips, who did Old School and, Hangover, to like have a really like, artistic, heady version of the Joker, kicking around there. And like, I'm glad it was successful. It's just, if it's not for you, doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah. And that's, I think where they fucked up is they asked them about superhero movies and people are like, stop asking them about it. And I'm like, well, it gets the clicks, they know they're going to get a reaction. Coppola was another one. And it's like, they should have called it comic book movie. Like, what do you think about comic book movies? Cause then you can't say that, yeah, sure, they've inspired comics, but Blade Runner, Alien, all of those, they're not comic book films. And that's where, he kind of took that opportunity to say, well, I've built characters that I see as superheroes, and he doesn't see it the same way we do. He's from a completely different generation. So to him, superhero means something completely different. And that's one of the things that there's probably some frustration there. I'm sure this isn't the first time he's been asked about it, or what Marvel movie would you direct, or what characters would you want to, and I'm sure they're kind of drowned in a lot of that. And I'm sure there's frustration at seeing what the popular thing is at the time, as it always will be. I think whatever Westerns were the big thing at one point, now superhero films are, and the next thing will be another one. And I don't fault Disney for wanting to follow that. Like, they have a formula. This is what's working. This is what the general audience wants. It's the most mass appealing thing, which gets us the most dollars. So that's the bottom line right there. They're not concerned about who's going to be the best director for this film to make the best quality movie. They're concerned about which one's going to make the film that's going to bring us the most tickets, which, you have X amount of jokes you got to hit here for every serious moment. And that's, it's working for them. Good on them. It's not for me. But I think where I get a little bit like, come on, guys, at the fan base is, one, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the world already. Like, who cares? But two, the guys made fucking Alien, Blade Runner. All these filmmakers can say whatever the fuck they want at this point. Oh, yeah. If I make a Blade Runner, I can say whatever. I'd say, fuck shit, man. Listen to me. I fucking made Blade Runner. But
Ridley Scott's earned the right to have his fucking opinion on movies. And, some butthurt Twitter user, that's literally just like sucks the teat of Disney Marvel. They don't know what they're talking about if they're going to get angry at Ridley Scott. I mean, they're taking it like Ridley Scott criticized them personally.
Yeah, and I saw the comments of, the guy that made Blade Runner and Alien is going to talk about bad scripts. And I'm like, you could have picked the worst two movies from his fucking repertoire. It tells me that they probably haven't seen those, which is fine, but and the other thing is, you're only as good as the last movie you made. And I'm like, fucking Last Duel was amazing. It was incredible. And I'm excited for House of Gucci. But I can't wait for the next filmmaker to be asked that question. And I'm sure I'll be here with the same reaction to it. On the opposite side, another filmmaker was asked about superhero films or comic book movies. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Halle Berry revealed that she'd like to direct a Catwoman film. We have a quote here from her. She said, "If I can get a hold of that now, knowing what I know, having this experience, and reimagine that world the way I reimagined this story. Bruise was written for a white Irish Catholic, 25-year-old girl. I got to reimagine it. I wish I could go back and reimagine Catwoman and have a redo on that," end quote. Bruise being her latest project. What do you think about this? I'm kind of intrigued by it. I know Catwoman's crazy hated by a lot of people, but experience does say a lot.
I can't say that I'm excited about it. Like one of the things where I would love to see you kind of people can course correct. They can learn from their mistakes. Yeah, I don't know that I would want Halle Berry to have her hands on Catwoman. Great, you recognize how terrible that movie was. Would you want to put yourself through that experience, just to kind of prove that you had grown since then, or that you recognize how bad that movie was? You're going to have the specter of that original Catwoman hanging over your entire production. Every interview is going to be about that old movie instead of the new one. And it's like, I feel like if she wanted to do that, she'd only be setting herself up for, an agonizing process. But if you're going to do it, hey, why not take it to Toby Emmerich and HBO Max?
That's right. I'm on the camp of this might be crazy enough to work. You give her a low budget, and look, you can only go up from here.
you could have Halle Berry's Catwoman like you had Todd Phillips' Joker. Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, crazier things have happened, and Halle Berry is not untalented. She's a very talented actress. I haven't really seen anything she's directed. And if she's behind the camera directing someone else, maybe she can see where the mistakes were. I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand. It's just something that I would really have to get I'd really have to be sold on it really hard.
The final news story this week is yet another person who is talking about superhero films, and this is in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter. Very divisive. Henry Cavill spoke out again about his future as Superman, and I'm curious to hear what you pull out of it. He said, quote, "There's still a lot of storytelling for me to do as Superman, and I would absolutely love the opportunity. The killing of Zod gave a reason for the character never to kill again. Superman falling to the ground and screaming afterward. I don't think that was originally in the script, but I wanted to show the pain he had. I did far more emotional takes they didn't choose. Tears were happening. He just killed the last remaining member of his species. That's the choice he made in that moment, and he'll never do that again. There's an opportunity for growth after that, to explore the psyche of Superman as a deep, seemingly invulnerable, godlike being, but with real feeling on the inside. As I always say, the cape is still in the closet," end quote. A lot in the Snyderverse fandom took that very personally, as it does seem to differ from Zack's version of Superman in Justice League Parts 1, and in the future we know what Part 2 and 3 were meant to happen as far as where the direction of Superman. And there's a lot of even though he showed up in the Snyder Cut announcement video when they were doing the Man of Steel commentary, there hasn't been a lot of public support from Henry for Zack as far as the future of the Snyderverse. He didn't tweet out, release the Snyder Cut like Ben and Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, and Gal Gadot did. So it seems like the fan base is not entirely happy with Henry. There's some in the movement who supposedly might have some inside information about. He's very much a guy that listens to his agent, and his agent is there for his best interests of, let's get you the most money possible. And the most money possible is, let's do a Superman movie with Warner Brothers. Let's not try to not do a movie because we want to wait to see what Zack can do with the sequels. And there's a lot of that rumor going around, unfortunately, with Henry. And I know Zack has put on Vero posts in support of Henry, how much he likes the guy. But it doesn't feel like he's the biggest supporter of Zack's version of Superman.
Henry Cavill seems to be like a very diplomatic person. Like, he's very cagey with what he decides to put on social media, even when it comes to his personal life, because people were, he was, I don't know if he's still in a relationship with someone, but he was with someone that he posted just a personal picture of the two of them, and like people were shitting all over it for some reason. But I think he's very cagey and very wary of how things can be interpreted on social media, and he's more interested in just the work. I feel like the way the trajectory of Superman, especially going into further BVS and other things like that, he was evolving to like the prime classic Superman we all know, we all kind of like grew up with, that is that symbol of hope, and he was evolving towards that. Like, Man of Steel, he just learned to fly, just learned there were still survivors, and then had to like basically kill them all, or send someone in the Phantom Zone and like kill the last one. And I remember like Mark Waid, like in an interview that he was talking about sitting in the theater watching Man of Steel and that last scene, and he just like started saying like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And just like screamed bloody murder when Superman actually like broke his neck, because Superman doesn't kill. I'm like, it really bothered me that Mark Waid said that, because Mark Waid is like as big a DC and comic book is particularly like DC historian, like to the point where, like, he knows Superman's social security number. It was in some comics at some point, and he will tell you he knows Clark Kent's social security number. But he lost it at that, and I'm like, if there's anything that's consistent in Superman's history of like killing and not killing, is that he fucking kills Zod all the fucking time. He killed him in Superman 2. When they came into the comics, he put on a fucking executioner's mask and like, killed him with kryptonite, because like he realized they were going to destroy the Earth. Like, there is a long history of Superman killing Zod. It's what he does. So I like that they tried giving it more resonance, so that like, well, as bad as it was, it still hurt him that he just killed the last, survivor of Krypton. And I feel like Cavill's very, very much like, as much as like these wheels have been turning of like, is there going to be another Man of Steel movies? Is he going to play him? Now we've got this one that I guess J.J. Abrams is producing. That's going to have a black Superman. And there's precedence for the comic for the like coexisting Supermen. Like they had introduced Val-Zod, so like who's to say that this couldn't be connected to that and be another survivor that is like Zod's nephew or son or whatever. But I want to see more Cavill Superman. Like I want to see what he has left in the tank. I'd love to see if it were in more Justice League movies and another Superman movie. So like I'm not mad at him. I want to see what else he can bring to the character. But he's also someone who's very much in demand. Like his The Witcher. I don't know if you watched that, but like that's fun. That's a fun watch. Like I can't wait to watch the second season.
Yeah, it's coming up quick too. I think one of the reasons why I also tend to lean in the camp of maybe he's not so excited about, or at least as gung-ho about, let's do Justice League 2 and 3 as the rest of the cast are. And I'd love to get this information from Zach or someone on the crew when they were doing the additional photography for the Snyder Cut. Anytime you saw Henry Cavill's Superman in that, like in the nightmare sequences and in the, not the post-credit scene, but the final scene right before Martian Manhunter, it's a CGI Superman, CGI Henry Cavill, or it's reused footage. So, for example, when he's holding Lois Lane and, Darkseid comes up behind him and he submits to the anti-life equation, that's one of those takes from Man of Steel that they did not use. It's the same scream. It's the same pose, at least, from that same angle. So he reused that. They recolored the suit. And then at the end, when he lands and Batman says he's here, that's the same shot from BVS when he lands in I think it was Iraq, somewhere in the Middle East, and he saves Lois Lane. That's that same shot, but they changed it so that his eyes glue red when he looked up. So that to me either tells me that they were like, no, we're able to work with this. Henry doesn't need to return, or he wouldn't return for the additional photography like Ben would, and Jared Leto, who they're like, nah, we'll do whatever you want, Zach.
Well, I think when that happened, when they were doing those reshoots, like they were supposed to be filming on that second season of The Witcher, and he'd had like a serious injury on set. So like that was one of the things that held up. There was production delays, then COVID, and then when they resumed production, like he got hurt doing a stunt on set, and like I don't think he was, because of the injury, I don't think he was available to shoot any additional for or in that time frame for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
I definitely want to know for sure. Yeah, maybe that's the case, and I'd want to, and maybe Zach won't tell us. He probably wouldn't if he's like, no, Henry didn't want to come back. He probably would. He's the kind of guy that doesn't seem to like to throw dirt like that, and he would just kind of never answer that question. Zach's
a classy guy.
Yeah. I think the one time you can point to was on Twitter when he went after Scott Mendelson of you compared the Saturday morning cartoons to the original cut, so stick to that. That was like the closest he ever got to going after him. Going after anyone. But that does wrap up our last news story for the week and the chunk of this week's episode. We're now heading on over into the Brocat block, which is what Matt and I have been doing this week. So I got to go to the theaters this week, but first I want to hear from you, Matt. What's been going on in your week, work-related, whatever it may be? How have you been since the last time you were on?
Transitioning from HHN activities, that's done, to now the holiday activities. We're now, it's our second full holidays together, but our first in our new place with my fiance and I. So we got we are like constantly booked, like doing things now. It's just like, and we're very comfortable like being home, but we constantly seem to be having things going on. Like we both have been going full tilt since like last Wednesday, it seems. We both kind of had colds, but we've been kind of like doing this fun little thing. I don't know if I mentioned last time, we're doing we're calling it state night. It's a at-home date night where we're randomly drawing a state and eating a popular dish in that state, having a beverage that's either from that state or popular in that state, and watching a movie that takes primarily in that state. So it's a long form, project. We'll be going through that for like the next year or so, and that's been fun, especially when you're like watching movies that like don't explicitly say that they took place in a particular state, like Empire Records. We did that. We found out was Delaware. Like I thought that was New Jersey for the longest time.
Yeah, let me ask you something about that. So when you research the drink or the food, when you get the drink, do you then head to World Market, or I'm sorry, not World Market, but Total Wine, and like, okay, is this where they like? How do you plan ahead of time to like, okay, we know this is the state, this is the movie. What's your process to then make sure you have those things for the viewing?
For the most part, we're looking for recipes that we can make at home. Hawaii, we cheated and we got tuna poke bowls. We didn't feel like messing around with trying to make that. But as far as like drinks go, we look for something that is typically either a beer from that particular state, or we'll look for like a mixed drink. Mixed drinks have been kind of dodgy. We did Arkansas, and the drink we found, several sources gave us this drink they called the Arkansas Razorback, which imagine like alcoholic cold brew concentrate. It was disgusting. But then like there's a couple of foodie groups on Facebook that she's in, where they're like people from Arkansas were like born and raised in Arkansas, I've never heard of this. So finding stuff online is like it's kind of hard finding like mixed drinks that are from a particular state, just because you've got like that section of population that literally has never heard of that. But finding beers, that's been a little bit more challenging, but we found stuff like the last movie we did, or last state we did was Idaho, and we found at Total Wine we found online a beer from Idaho, and they had it, and at Total Wine. So like we're finding stuff. It seems like if we can't find a beer from that particular state, that's when we're going to like the mixed drink. Because if you went to like Arkansas, the most popular beer in Arkansas was either Budweiser or Busch Light.
Gotcha.
Then as far as like what I've been playing, I just found like my controller for my Apple TV from just playing with my casual Apple arcade games, and I got into Transformers Tactical Arena.
Okay, yeah, I haven't heard of that one.
That's been a bunch of fun. It's just like a fun little casual game, something to kind of like unwind my brain. So, at the end of the day, but it's been fun. You got like a lot of the classic sounds. It's a card based game where you have like the 6 cards, and you play with so much energon. You deploy them to arena to take out another player's turrets, and this is fun. Like some rounds I get really like torn apart very quickly, and some I eke it out at the very end. But I only get irritated or mad when it's like I get like 2 or 3 like really bad losses in a row, like, and that's when I start getting angry. But ultimately it's fun. It kind of gives me that nostalgia kick of the cartoons.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. I'm guessing it's I think it was Rhinestone or something like that came out a few years back, where you get X amount of, as you said, energon to use throughout the day. Like you get refilled every so many hours, right? I'm guessing.
No, it's like as you're playing the game, like it's if you're on Apple Arcade, it's a subscription based thing, and it's like $4.99 a month, and this was part of the subscription base, so there's no additional cost for it. Like you earn energon from like winning games, and then when you're playing the game, you have like an energon meter, and just like you're playing Magic Gathering, like certain cards take so much mana to activate. This is like, okay, well, I have Optimus Prime, and this takes like 4 energon to activate. So it's kind of like you gotta wait for like energon to recharge in order to play different Autobots or Decepticons, whatever you have in your deck.
Okay, got it.
I'm gonna give you a Marvel movie I didn't like.
All right, well,
so I know I said a bit of fan of him, but Shang-Chi I finally watched last night. And it was not good.
Really?
I know there's a lot of people who did like it. I got a lot of friends who did, and I went into it wanting to like expecting my typical Marvel fare and looking to enjoy it. And both my fiance and I were like, where did they use the special effects budget in here? Because like everything looks kind of cheesy in this movie. Like you've got like mystical creatures, this big sci-fi, or this big like dragon on dragon fight at the end, and like it needed another pass or two. And like I feel like the script wasn't tight. Like I love the lead character in there, but save for a couple of scenes, it might be the most forgettable MCU movie.
Did you watch Eternals? Because I hear that from that movie from a lot of people.
Have not watched Eternals yet. I don't know if I'm going to have time to see that in the theaters before it comes to Disney Plus. Like, I probably the one I know I will see in the theater is going to be the new Spider-Man movie. Eternals, though, I am very interested in it. I want to see what they do with it. But like, as far as like movies go, since Endgame, the TV shows have been hitting for me. The movies have been kind of like, hit or miss. Like Black Widow, I would have enjoyed a whole heck of a lot more had it come out between Civil War and Infinity War. Then Shang-Chi, like I said, I don't think it was good at all. I mean, like there's a couple redeeming qualities in it, but it barely fits the MCU in my opinion. Then like Eternals, like I really want to see what they did with that, just because like I don't really have any particular strong connection to any of those characters. The Eternals is like one of those things where I'm open to them having done something inventive with it, like they did, or different with it, like they did with Guardians of the Galaxy. And it looks like visually like they were going for something that was a little bit more epic in scale. Whether that's what turned up on screen, I don't know, but I'm hoping for good things from the new Spider-Man movie, more because of the thought of seeing like the older versions of Spider-Man in there, like doing like a Into the Spider-Verse stuff, and seeing a lot of the returning villains from two different franchises with the current one. So it just looks like there's some crazy ideas in that movie that may or may not work, but that's the one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, the older franchises that a bunch of MCU fans hated as soon as the Holland one came out, and now they're like, "Oh no, those were great!" As soon as they made them,
they're all different, and I like them for different reasons. I will not say very many good things about Tobey's Spider-Man 3, but that has nothing to do with him. I just think Sam Raimi bent to the pressure of Avi Arad when he was making that movie, and like he didn't want to put Venom in that movie at all, and it shows. Sandman was great. I thought James Franco was kind of hammy in that one. I could with his version of the Goblin. Andrew Garfield, I thought he was a good Spider-Man, good Peter Parker, but it seemed like they were people get accused, like the Marvel movies, of just each movie's just setting up like the next movie. That's very much was the case with Garfield's Spider-Man movies, especially the second one. It seemed like they were more focused on trying to set up the next movie and they didn't focus as much on the movie that they were making. It's not his fault, like, but the Garfield movies, like they just didn't hit for me. They just kind of like, it was like all the parts were there. They just didn't balance everything out the way it should to make you want more.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really like the Garfield movies, and actually the Tobey ones too. Like I've always felt that Sony's had a really good track record of handling the Marvel characters that they do on the film rights to. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the new Spider-Man movie since I'm not going to be seeing it. And aside from some of the memes and tweets, like I don't really have a lot of interest in it. But that's cool that you're excited for it and that you're going to check out some more of these, like Eternals and whatnot. I'll probably ask you next time you're on, like what you thought of, Far From Cinema or whatever, if it's out by then, if you're on by then, and we'll see. The one I have that I saw in theaters was the Snyder Cut for Rocky vs. Drago, or Rocky 4.
Okay, yeah. I heard about that. I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any way to really spoil the movie, but I will say that when I watched it, I saw it in theaters. It was a 1 day only event that my brother and sister invited me to. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going. Otherwise, I think it's up on Amazon Prime right now. You can stream it. And I do want to buy it and own it. But when I first saw this, I was like, I expected a vast difference from Rocky 4 that I grew up with. And I'm seeing this thing and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing some scenes that are missing. It's a little bit more tight and it's missing some of the fluff that the fourth one you didn't really need. But there were also some scenes that I'm like, why is this still in it though? Like there's that, you've seen Rocky 4, right?
Yeah.
There's a scene where after Apollo dies, he has this fight with Adrian and he's driving and you see that music montage of what we just saw of him like dying and like these close-up shots of his face as he's driving and there's no easy way out. I'm like, that's going to be gone in the fucking film. No, it's in there. Like it's still in there. Now, he did edit it and removed some of the extreme close-up shots of his eyes and he inserted some more scenes from the previous Rocky films. He made it all in black and white to make it clear that they were flashbacks, but I was still like, that's not a necessary scene. We just saw him fucking die. So there were some moments like that. Now, I will say if you intend to watch the Snyder Cut of this, watch the documentary called Keep Punching. It's on YouTube, an hour and a half or so of him working during COVID on this cut of the film. And then I realized exactly like there was way more changes that I simply did not notice watching it that he made. You know, moving the angle of the camera a little bit, shifting it. Like, you know, this punch always bothered me because Drago is punching forward, but it lands a little weird on me when he's like, I don't know why I didn't catch that before. So can you angle this different? So I'm like, holy shit, he really did edit the fuck out of this version of it.
So it's more like in the fine details.
Exactly right. And there's scenes like where Apollo's going, I want you. And he doesn't have his gloves on when he's doing that, yet in the scene before and after that, he has his gloves on, and he's like, I don't know how I didn't catch that before, so they had to change that. So there's like a lot of little like continuity errors that he got to correct in his version of the film, and he was simply like, look, you know, I wasn't patient when I was making Rocky IV. I was trying to just get it out there, and I probably should have taken more time, and now I have this experience, and this is the one that he said bothered him the most from the 5 movies that he wanted to go back and try to fix. And it was absolutely worth watching. It's still an incredible, you know, it's a Rocky IV movie. I still got what I wanted out of it. But it definitely
was the height of Cold War propaganda.
Yes, and actually that's really interesting because that is changed quite a bit in this. As far as like less of a patriotic type of movie, there's a whole alternate take to his speech after winning that I'm like, this is fucking better. You know, this makes more sense. Does Gorbachev still stand up and do the slow clap? He does not, man. There's another take of him just getting up and fucking leaving, and they're all pissed off. And I was like, can I get a Rocky V with their revenge? Because that's how it seemed like it ends. As if like, oh, you'll see more of us later. And I'm like, they're fucking coming.
He's gonna go and do an alternate edit where like Rocky V is now like Rambo 3.
That needs to happen.
They just merge the two universes and say Rocky Balboa like lost his mind and went to war against Russia and Afghanistan.
It would fit in perfectly because that's the take that they used, and it's cool. Like it works.
Good, that plays out. That would definitely. I mean, I can see why they did that. You know, in the Cold War era of the '80s, but you know, like it was still always really weird. Like, no, Gorbachev would really not be clapping for Rocky Balboa.
Exactly. Like they still have the crowd chanting for him. Like, all right, and that's one thing. And I'm like, I don't think that would happen either. But there's no way they win them all. He wins them all over from his being Rocky and never giving up. But at least they kept that part of it of them like, no, fuck this American still. Like at least that head of all of those people were still like, nope, and they just get up and leave. It's pretty good. I do recommend it to anyone if you haven't seen it. And even if it was terrible, like I'm glad that Stallone got to go back and do what he wanted to do, what he needed to do. And again, please watch the Keep Punching documentary before or after you see the movie. I think it'll really enrich, and at least for me, it opened my eyes on like how extensive the edits were in this version. But outside of that, the last thing I have as far as my end of the Brocat block is I don't think I had a gig as of the last time I worked, but I did land one. It's a part-time job at I don't know if it's like a food stand, if you want to call it that, but like one of the little kitchens that they have in one of these smaller markets. And
like
so
these food halls have been popping up.
Yeah, very similar to that. So I got hired on one of those, and there was no interview, no nothing. I got a phone call like, hey, do you still want this job? Can you start on Monday? And as I was telling you off recording here, that I was very surprised that, and I understand that they're hurting a lot. The food industry needs people, so it shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but I was still surprised. Like, oh, wow, they just totally trust that I'm going to work out just fine. So like me, as someone who went through interviewing people at the comic shop, I would definitely like want to still see, even though we were hurting for employees, like I don't want to waste my time on a day one of training on just like a whim of like, well, this resume looks good. Can you start on Monday? But I'm grateful that they did, because they were the second job to call me out of all these applications that I sent out. As I was telling you, I'm a little bit bitter at the fact that all of these places seemingly are looking for people that I sent out an application to, yet only 2 called me. But you know what? I'm very thankful that they did. Someone did, 2 people did, and that the second one ended up hiring me, and that it's a paycheck. It's not what I was making before at all, and it's not as many hours. But as Kelly was saying, the luxury of I clock out, I go home, I don't have the job in the mind anymore like I did when I managed the comic shop. It's done. And I clock back in, that's it.
There was a time I had a job where I'm still not making as much money as I did at this old job, that I was miserable at it at the time I left. And like, when you're at the point where you're like, there's a difference between just unhappy with your job or not liking your job and just being miserable about your job. And I was miserable at that job. I can rarely say, like, there have been plenty of times in jobs since where I've said I've been unhappy, but I've never been miserable. So like, would I love to still be getting that paycheck at that job? Sure would. But not at the expense of my mental health. And my mental health was going way downhill at that job when I left it. I recognized it in time. Sounds like you recognize it in time. And, it's okay to take a step back and, let your mind breathe. And maybe this will lead you into something else that you're totally not expecting.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. And I'm glad that you've gone through that experience too, so you can relate to some of what I was going through there. And it is a nice change of pace to be a beginner at something, at a field that I've never worked in. As far as I've been a server, but in the prepping food, making, wraps and nachos and all that stuff. Like, I'm like, oh, I've never done this shit before. I've never cut up veggies with a butcher knife. It's just like, all right, let's see if I lose a finger at some point. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But there's something to be said about, all right, my ego's in check. I'm not great at this. Let's learn. Let's get better at this. It's new. It's not retail. Yes, I'm still working with customers, and it is what it is, but it's a job right now. They could have called any other guy, any other person that applied, and they called me. So there's a lot to be said there.
Yeah, I hope it works out, and that you get the space and distance from your previous job that you need to find the next thing.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it, and the search continues. But if I end up loving this, then great. I have no embarrassments or shame about where I'm at all.
I could hear when you were talking about, like, or especially like since the pandemic and like all the changes that were going on with Diamond and Lunar, and I'm like dealing with like multiple final order cutoff dates and multiple distributors. Like, I would hear it in your voice, like in some of the podcasts, like having briefly run my own comic book store. It was great only having to deal with one distributor like every week. Like, did they have a monopoly? Yeah, sure. Monopolies are not a great thing, but it worked great for comic shops. And I could hear, the frustration of having to deal with, like, now, like, what day do you take off from work? Because now each distributor has a different cutoff date, and like, when are you going to have time for your own family? Like, it's like, it wasn't so much like your company, but these other distributors that were dictating your work-life balance.
Yeah. And that was a problem, and I couldn't find it. Maybe someone with more experience or someone greener at this might have had that idea of like, oh, I can just change my life. It just wasn't working for me, unfortunately.
Someone who doesn't have a family to go home to at the end of the day.
Exactly right. Or that might maybe, I don't know. Like, I wasn't at the point where I was going to neglect that side of my life, thankfully. So And I'm still plugged into the comic shop, and I'm still hearing some of the changes and frustrations that they're going through, and I sympathize again with them, as I mentioned early in the show. But I'm also very grateful that I'm like, man, I would have been really pissed off this week if I were still here. And thankfully that's no longer my issue, even though I still get a little bit of anxiety hearing it. But I'm like, you know what? It's not my job. It's not my gig. I went in today to pick up my comics. There was a question that came up from one worker to the other that I could have answered, but I had some restraint of like, it's not my job. It's not my business. And it's not necessarily saying I'm not being helpful, but it's also me just having restraint.
Well, now you can get back to like enjoying comics, not so much, for like your own enjoyment and entertainment, and not have to like worry about giving someone like a customer in the store a filtered opinion on a book that you really don't like, but you got to kind of bite your teeth because like you don't want to lose a sale.
Yeah. And that's one thing towards the end. They did encourage all of us to be honest, but also to spin it in a positive way of like, well, it wasn't for me. However, I've heard X, Y, and Z. And if it was a Marvel book, I'd straight up tell them, I'm like, look, I don't read anything Marvel. And then I turned to Sean, my coworker, but you might have read it. And then the conversation went off to them. But I totally get it. There's still some filtering that happens. And I do hope that I can, even though my pull list is as short as it's ever been due to my finances, I'm still picking up some comics each week. And maybe that list will grow as I either make more money or as I grow to enjoy some more comics over time.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, we'll see what happens next week. And I'm grateful, Matt, that you were able to jump on this week. I know it was a sort of a short notice. I like to usually give a week and a half notice, but I'm glad that you were able to be on and talk all kinds of stuff this week. So once again, huge thank you. I'll never, I'm always floored that you guys are so generous with your time each time you guys are on.
This is my nerd talk for the week. Like, not that I don't enjoy my time with my fiance, and like we learn and watch, all the stuff that she, I learn and watch about stuff that she likes. She learns and watch stuff that I like, but I don't really have as much an opportunity to just straight up like geek out over, news like that gets our blood pumping.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'll go through the similar thing with Kelly. I'm like, and this happened. And she'll be like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, she doesn't really care. She's just listening to me.
being supportive. And, like, that's great that you're excited about that. But like, it's cool to just like hash it out with, someone who's deep into the minutia of it.
Exactly right. So huge thanks again, Matt. And go ahead and let the Brocat Corps know where they can find you.
You can't find me, but I can find you. I'm kidding. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Madner, or Instagram. I still haven't posted there much other than like stuff to try to win stuff for our upcoming wedding, but it's Madner.com on Insta, and it's spelled DOTCOM at the end there.
Perfect. And there will be links to your social media on the description of today's episode in case people want to come back or they're driving. But otherwise, to the Brocat on the other side, if you tell a friend about the podcast, in case you did enjoy today's episode, or if it was your first or over 400th one, word of mouth is the most successful thing at helping a podcast grow. So if you're enjoying the podcast and you want to help us out, tell a friend about the show. If they enjoy DC stuff, gaming, Star Wars, there was some Star Wars talk this week. Let them know about the Reasons I'm Broke podcast. We would all really appreciate that. But otherwise, you can also find links to everywhere. You can find the show at thereasonsimbroke.com. Thank you so much once again for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Matt, and Brocat Corps. All will be well.
Eat your turkey.
Let's talk about Thanksgiving in the post song thing here. What do you got planned for Turkey Day?
We've got like two different Friendsgivings going on. I got my first one this Saturday, and then another one like the Saturday after. But like Thanksgiving Day, Steph doesn't like turkey around for days, and like I do. But last year we just ended up like walking over to SeaWorld. Like my old apartment was within walking distance of SeaWorld, so we just went there, kind of fed the sea puppies, as we call them, the stingrays, and just hanging out there all day. And so like she's got a friend that's moved from Virginia that's moving to town, and she'll be like 2-3 days in town at that point. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're still within walking distance of SeaWorld, so we're gonna walk over there and just kind of do our thing. Just take it a little casual. We're not gonna overeat or anything. Try to work off some of those holiday calories. Enjoy some of the lights and festivities there.
Yeah, those are coming up, man. All the holiday food.
Yeah, we're feeling it. Like we keep starting and stopping on getting an exercise routine going, because I had a nasty cold a couple of weeks ago, and then tweaked my knee, and then she's been having some back spasms while she's been sleeping at night, and not good to wake up in the morning, and she had a cold. So now we're desperately trying to get on a routine, but the holidays and sicknesses have been kind of getting in the way. But we're looking forward to hosting some people this weekend, and then it'll have happened yesterday when this drops, and then going over to some other friends, and then we're gonna be getting our holiday viewing schedule going. What do you watch perennially this time of year?
So there's one holiday movie I watch. We don't have a whole tradition about it, especially now with the little guy. We're mainly watching dinosaur shit, but it's Bad Santa is my Christmas movie or holiday movie. Cool. And probably my favorite one. Yeah. And like Iron Man 3, I consider a Christmas movie, and I do enjoy it, but I don't watch it on the regular. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is one of my favorites. That's also same director. Same stars.
Shane Black sets everything at Christmas time.
Yeah. So I really like that one too. It's another great Christmas movie, but for some reason, Bad Santa really gets me. And I view it under a slightly different lens, like now that I no longer drink. So it's kind of like, oh, I've gone through something similar to what, not to that extent, but I'm like, okay, so I'm relating a little bit more to the character, but it's still not to the point where it's not funny to me. It's still fucking hilarious. I love that movie. I heard Billy Bob was actually drunk quite a bit while they were filming the movie, and you can kind of tell when you're watching it. And it's so fucking funny, man. It gets me. It never gets old. There's the director's cut, the theatrical. Love them both. That's my movie right there. What about yours? What are you going through?
This is my favorite time of year, where I love getting in arguments with people about like what's a Christmas movie and what isn't. And while there's plenty of movies set at Christmas, I would not say are Christmas movies. Like Iron Man 3, I would say takes place at Christmas, but it's not really a Christmas movie. That's just kind of more scenery. It has to be more than just scenery. And I wish I could clearly define that, because like one of my go-to Christmas movies is Die Hard.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, like some people say if Christmas plays a part in the plot, then it's considered a major part of the plot, then it's considered a Christmas movie.
And it pretty much does. It's not just setting. It's like mentioned by characters. The whole, like the gears of the actual plot come into motion because it's a Christmas office party, so like that was like the window that the terrorists decided on. Well, fake terrorists, the thieves decided on to spring it because there would be less people around. And I would say it's more a Christmas movie than Die Hard 2, which takes place at the same time of year, a couple of years later. But I got that I have to watch every year. Christmas Vacation I got to watch every year. And then I haven't watched it for years, but like I think this year I got to get a rewatch in on Gremlins.
Oh, nice! I used to love that movie as a kid.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. Like it's one of those evergreen movies, man, that holds up, because even though it's like all animatronics and you can see the the rubber and all like that, it still holds up. It's got a texture and a tactile feel that you appreciate it more with age.
How long until Gremlins 3 or the Gremlins reboot? It's coming.
If it happens, cool. But like, I wasn't a fan of like Gremlins 2. Like, if there's any more Gremlins movies, I don't really care. I've got that one. I've got that first one, and that's evergreen for me. Like, I'm really looking forward to like this true Ghostbusters sequel. For this third one, like that just came out. As far as like talk about sequels to to movies from the 80s, and because I feel it feels a little, more tactile and rough, and like I want to see what kind of nods they give to the late Harold Ramis in there, and Paul Rudd can do no wrong.